Hey, BecomingMe.TV, Emily Cummins here, and right now we're in a series called From a Guy's Perspective. We're unpacking topics from a guy's perspective. Now, today we're going to unpack the question, what is biblical submission? And what does that even mean? Now, grab your cup of coffee and join us as my friend Mark, also known to me as Dad, unpacks this question with us today.
What is biblical submission, and what does that really even mean? The word submit, even the hard sounding of the consonants submit, it seems to be overbearing, overpowering. Nobody wakes up and says, "Today my goal and my dream is to submit to somebody else." Well, why is this? Well, I think there are multiple reasons. Let me go to the beginning first. Is in the Garden of Eden, in a perfect place, you have God who created a perfect environment for the first man and the first woman. And God said, enjoy everything, all of the garden, except for one tree. God asked them to submit, that God knew better than they did. That little bit of pressure, they could have enjoyed everything except for one tree. That was too tempting. And on that day, they decided to submit to their own needs, temptations, and they went away from God. And today, not much has changed. The idea of submitting to someone else, it seems to be restrictive. It seems to imply that somehow I'm less valued. I'm less of a person. We live in a culture today where everybody champions their rights. We live in a culture today where people are incredibly confused by our value and our roles. See, God has given us distinct roles. He's given us distinct value. God looked at every single human being and he says, I'm not a respecter of persons. God doesn't look and see, oh, that's a man and that's a woman, and I look at this person higher than the other person. God says that everybody are equal in his sight. God doesn't look and say, well, there's an African and there's an Asian and there's a Caucasian. And God sees us all, value. He values all of us so much that he sent his one and only son to die for all humanity. The confusion when we look at the word submit is around our roles. Somehow we've thought that if we submit, our role of submitting makes us less valuable. That somehow submitting to another person means that person's over me, that person is controlling me. But see, we really have it backwards. When I'm submitting, that's not the person controlling me. When I submit to an authority, that's me controlling me. That's not them having control over me. When I submit to the authority of a speed limit sign, that's not the government controlling me. That's me choosing. This is how I'm going to live. In a relationship with my wife, Linda, Mark, we are the same team. God looks at us equal value. We have equal value. However, God created me a man and God created Linda a woman. And we have distinct roles. Linda's role as mom to my two daughters doesn't make her more important in the girls' lives than I. It makes Linda mom. It makes me dad. We have distinct roles. In the Bible, in Ephesians, God said that the wife is to submit to her own husband. I think over the years we've taken this particular piece of scripture terribly out of context. The idea is that a lady should submit, lay down, whatever the guy says. That's not at all what scripture says. It says, yes, ladies, you submit to your own husbands, but then it says, husbands, likewise. In other words, the burden is even greater on us dudes because we are to submit to our brides, and we are also submit to God like Christ submitted to God the Father when he gave his one and only life. Christ gave his life. It wasn't taken from him. He submitted his life. He submitted his ideas, his plans, and took on the very form of humanity. He was God, but he submitted to God the Father's plan and became a human. He submitted to the limitations of the human life so that everybody, every person one day could have the ultimate value by being adopted into God's family through a personal relationship through Jesus. Now, Jesus gave his one and only life. One day every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. He is King. The one who submitted the most, the one who gave his one and only life. One day the world will kneel down and say he's the greatest of all. See, it's backwards, our thinking. We think that submitting is an act of releasing control to someone else over us, and nobody wants to be controlled by somebody else. That's why submission, biblical submission, is all about you. It's about me. It's not about someone controlling me. As a student, submitting to your parents doesn't mean that your parents are more valuable. It means their role in your life right now is parents. Your role as a student, it doesn't mean that you're less than. It means that right now, what's best is submitting, letting their leadership and authority. Why? Because ultimately, our relationship with God, it's centered at the core around submitting. Submitting to the fact that God is God and we are not. Submitting to the reality that we have sinned and God has not. Submitting to the reality that we can't save or fix ourselves. Submitting that God sent his son to die on the cross. See, apart from submitting to God, we have no relationship with God. Likewise, not submitting to somebody in our life means really we don't have much of a relationship. So what is biblical submission? It's understanding that my value is rooted in God, not in a boss, a parent, a friend, a spouse. And by me submitting to somebody who's in authority, government, school, a coach, doesn't make me less than that person. It reveals the health of my relationship with God as I have a relationship with this person.